In Full Zoom is presented to you by Calvo Enterprises, Inc.
Off a day, everyone, and welcome to another edition of In Full Zoom. I'm Nestor Licanto, and today we're going to talk about the state of the construction industry in the era of the COVID pandemic. And we've got 5 great guests today, and I'm going to ask them to each introduce themselves and their company and what they do. And let me start with you, James Martinez, the president of the Guam Contractors Association. Hey, James.
Hey, Hoffaday, Nestor, thanks for inviting us here today. The Contractor Association is an association of a lot of contractors, subcontractors, and other businesses that provide ancillary services to the industry. And so all your guests that are here with us today are actually a part of our organization, are members of the Guam Contractors Association. I've got several of them who are on the board of directors, and they can introduce themselves later, but they include Bill Beery, Jessica Barrett, and Miss Lucia Wood, all from their respective companies, and also members of the GCA board of directors.
All right, so speaking of Jessica, Barrett Plumbing, please introduce yourself.
Hi, Jessica Barrett, president of Barrett Plumbing. I'm also the immediate past chair for the Guam Contractors Association, and great to join you and help get this discussion on its way.
All right, and there's Bill Beery of the Tutujan Hill Group. Tell us about your company, Bill.
Good morning. We're a general contractor. I'm the general manager here and vice president, and we seem to be doing a lot of construction here lately.
And Lucia Wood is with APTIM, and that's not an acronym for anything. It's just the name of the company. Tell us about APTIM, Lucia.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me. My name is Lucia Wood. I'm the project manager for APTIM APTIM Federal Services on the vertical construction side of the house. I'm currently on site at the Delta Echo Pier where we're building a hardening project. APTIM has been on Guam for 23 years through our legacy companies, and great to be here.
Yeah, and last but not least, we have Robert Salas Jr. Of Pacific Federal Management. Have a day, Rob.
Hey, how are you doing? I'm the president of Pacific Federal Management. We're a bit of a younger company. We've been around since 2017, and we've been fortunate, though, to work with a lot of people that are on this call right now. So it just shows how small this contractor community is. But, I'm very excited to be here and to talk to you guys today about, about the discussion with COVID. So.
Thank you, and thanks everybody for joining us. And before we get started, let me just read something I came up with in my research, and then we could use that as the basis for our discussion. And it says, engineering and construction companies are used to cyclical downturns, but the speed and strength with which COVID-19 has struck is unprecedented. Projects are being delayed or canceled, supply chains are under threat, employee and subcontractor labor health is a concern, and there are practical challenges around social distancing on construction sites. Companies that have had to furlough workers might find the future availability and skills of those workers uncertain. And because many construction and contracting companies operate without substantial capital reserve, the impact of the lockdowns could force some to restructure debt, seek new sources of capital, or risk insolvency. So on that bright note, let's start our discussion of what in your mind is the state of the construction industry on Guam during this unprecedented COVID pandemic. And let me start with you again, James.
Okay, well, I think the best folks to talk to that issue is actually the contractors who are here. However, I have not heard of any companies that have, shut their doors. I think the construction continues, especially on the military projects. And so during the lockdown, there was still some activity going on base. I don't know too much of what was happening outside the fence, however, and there's probably possibility of maybe some adverse effects on some of the contractors during the lockdown, but I haven't heard of too many. And as far as I know, that a lot of the construction projects, especially military, have continued even through the lockdown. Another thing I want to note also is that in our industry, safety is one of the top and highest priority. And it's not just a priority, it's actually a value. And so a lot of our contractors, responsible contractors, really take that to heart and do whatever it takes to make sure that their workers come to work safe and leave safe to be with their family and friends. So with that, I'll open the door to the other contractors who may share some of their experiences on each of their respective companies.
Sure. Bill, you want to tackle that one? What's the state of the? Because I know that you have experience both from the military side and the civilian side. What's the state of the industry right now, particularly with the military buildup?
Well, it's interesting. Construction just kind of kept on going during the lockdown. We were considered essential, and so the projects on base were basically mandated to keep going, and the projects outside the base, if they were already funded, seemed to keep on going. I think the downside to all this is that some of the future outside the base work is going to get impacted. People will probably slow down, wait for the economy a little bit, that sort of thing in the private sector, but the military side keeps on going. I think the most direct impact we had was with our crews. The governor and the health team here in Guam did a pretty good job of scaring everybody about the virus, and rightfully so. And some of the men wouldn't come to work, that sort of thing. We kind of had some manpower issues that way, but the projects kept on going as a whole. So generally speaking, construction's been lucky through all of this. I think we kept on going.
Yeah, as you mentioned, construction was among those essential industries that was allowed to continue despite the emergency lockdown. Lucia, what's been your APTIM's experience?
Again, like Bill and most of us who do work on the federal side of the fence, we were blessed that we actually continued to keep going. We were considered essential. We did not have the impact that I've heard from other businesses that do business outside the fence. So with that, we actually, APTIM changed their way of allowing people onto the job sites. Everybody who comes onto our job sites now must be, they're temp checked before they ever start work. It's 100% mask. It's social distancing wherever possible. So we've had to take it from a safety standpoint that not only when they walk on here that they're protected, but also we are protected being here. And again, on the federal side of the house, mask wearing is across the board. Where we get impacted is while Guam was shut down, a lot of our H-2s that were in process to be able to get their renewed visas were unable to do anything. We actually had to stop work for a little bit because we had to wait for visas to come through, and then going through the DBID process. And with the Naval Base Guam, the DBID process is by appointment only. And you can just imagine it's kind of a snowballing effect, but we've been able to work through it. But we make the government aware every day where we are affected by COVID.
In Full Zoom is presented to you by Calvo Enterprises, Inc. GU Self-Storage, conveniently located near the Harmon McDonald's. We offer affordable rates, online payments, and auto bill pay for your convenience. Plus gate access daily from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. Call us today at 648-7867 for more information. In Full Zoom is presented to you by Calvo Enterprises, Inc.
Yeah, thanks for bringing up the H2. I wanted to delve a little bit more into that a little bit later, the foreign skilled labor. To you, Jess and Rob, how have your companies been impacted by COVID? I imagine that you had to change some protocols for your employees in dealing with different projects.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, Lucia, they hit it right on the head. in terms of the actual projects themselves, they're continuing full force, especially the ones on base. But the impact is with respect to the people, and really just trying to calm them and making sure that we're going to do what we can to make sure that they're in the safest environment possible. So when we got the news, the first thing I did was I went to each job site and I did a poll with the supervisors, because if we tell them what we're going to do, that's one thing. But if we get their input and their feedback to see what they needed in terms of PPE to make them comfortable and safe, and to determine what kind of methodologies we could implement to put them in the best environment possible, it would sort of empower them to feel a little bit more comfortable. And there was actually a particular day, I remember this day, there was, I think, 12 positives we had in one day. And that resulted in a lot of guys just, they all turned in leave form immediately, and they all panicked. No one knew what to do. So it was from that point on, I figured, okay, I need to start and talk to everyone. So we got as much PPE as we could. Of course, PPE was very difficult to find on island, so we tried to outsource as much as we could. And we did staggered schedules for the office staff. So we had staff half in the office, half out the office to work as much as we could. Even things as simple as picking up a paycheck. We tried to do a system where they would have to do a reservation, and only supervisors would pick up the paycheck to try to reduce as much contact as possible. So it definitely has had an impact, not necessarily for the projects themselves, but from the people aspect of it. And especially if anyone ever turns positive, rumors go down really quick, everyone starts to panic, and it's just, that's really where the impact is felt, I think.
Yeah, that's another management consideration is the managing the information that goes out to the employees. How about you, Jess? How has the plumbing industry and Barrett Plumbing been impacted?
Well, in the initial onset, when the lockdown was issued, we were at a slower pace, of course, and we limited our responses to the work as the only emergencies. So, quality of life, sewer lines, plugs, busted water lines. We tried to minimize our workers going out, and it was very unusual for us. We're usually breakneck speed, and so we were definitely at a slowdown. Everything took a lot longer than it needed to, so we were stuck in the the roadblocks. We were taking longer at the stores for supplies, so it was really stressful getting the regular things done on top of dealing with the whole COVID issues and making sure that everybody stayed safe. And then we had a few employees that took the time off because of their family situations. They had small children, or they weren't able to come to work because of the daycare issues. So we had a lot of it kind of worked out because we were slower, and then we were able to have those people that needed to take off able to avail of that. So it was definitely adjusting. It's still adjusting every day. We're still very busy though, even though almost 95% of our work is outside the fence. We are still very busy, and we're having to turn customers away, unfortunately, because we do still have some workers that are out because of the issues with the childcare, and then the exposure that they would be having here at work. So, but we've just taken, like you said, additional measures. One of the most important things I think is to keep our employees safe, because with plumbing, it's often difficult to do the social distancing. They need each other's help, and so we do temperature checks, and they all have their, as a standard, we always had hand sanitizers and gloves as a regular because of the industry that we are in. So luckily they've used that before, so they're accustomed. It's now the mask and everything else. So we're just having to readjust our operations to accommodate it and make sure that everybody stays safe.
Yeah, clogged pipes and drains don't know what a COVID is, but you guys
Right.
you guys were part of the essential, right? You guys were not shut down.
Yes, absolutely. Right, absolutely.
Okay. Another topic. One of the most important things in the construction and contracting industry, I imagine, is the supply chain for materials and equipment. Talk to us about the impact, if any, to the supply chain during the pandemic.
And I'll kind of jump in on that if you don't mind,
Sure.
Nestor. For us, because there are materials for our job site may not be located on island, we had to go back to the mainland to go find this material. What we were finding is that the manufacturers and the factories were shut down, or they were on reduced schedules. So something that could take as easy as a quick phone call or a quick email and put it into process, you had to wait because there may not be somebody monitoring that email or being in that specific facility. And then when you did get it, you would then have to try to find what freight company on the mainland would be able to take it to the port to be put into a container. And again, it's just what you take for granted on a daily basis, as far as, you know, smooth, quick through the supply chain. It has been affected. There are factories that are just now opening back up.
Yeah. Bill, have you experienced that in the course of your work so far? Bill, you still with us?
Yeah, I'm here, I think. I hope.
Okay.
Can you see me or not?
Actually, I can't. So maybe we'll have Jason check on that. And Rob, how about you? Oh, there you are. Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, well, I totally agree. The freight business, or everything we get here in Guam, is manufactured somewhere else, and that somewhere else was more impacted by the virus. Ended up taking a long time to get stuff, right?
In Full Zoom is presented to you by Calvo Enterprises, Inc. GU Self-Storage, conveniently located near the Harmon McDonald's. We offer affordable rates, online payments, and auto bill pay for your convenience. Plus gate access daily from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. Call us today at 648-7867 for more information. In Full Zoom is presented to you by Calvo Enterprises, Inc.
Rob, do you have anything to add to that?
You know, that's exactly sort of the thing I felt as well. Even some of the local vendors, they'd be working remotely, so the communication time would take a little bit longer than we're used to. But you know, we all have to be understanding with the situation we're in, and you know, we've been fortunate to work our way through it. So yeah, both local and off-island vendors, it has been a little bit more difficult to obtain some material we normally would need.
Yeah, obviously the boon to the military buildup, or the Marine Corps base, for example, has been a boon to the local construction industry. But what about projects outside of the fence? Do you guys see any impact to those? Were there, I know that, for example, a couple of projects are the completion of the airport's expansion and the GPA power plant. Those are two major projects, but I can't think of anything else that may be going on outside of the fence besides those two. What do you think, James? I mean, what are the prospects?
Well, we also, we had the Sabaki, of course, that was completed, and that kind of was probably completed prior to the COVID lockdown and all that stuff. But the other project, the commercial project that's ongoing, and you know, they start to clear ground, but I haven't seen any activity there lately, is the Don Quixote project on Marine Corps Drive. And that might be a labor issue. I'm not too sure, but I haven't seen any activity there since the lockdown. So I'm not sure where the problems are or what has stopped that project for now.
I think they've been drilling piles, so it's been kind of quiet, but they've been active in there. Yeah, I think it's just a stage of the construction. I don't think they have any issues. Except they haven't pulled a permit yet.
Yeah, for those who aren't familiar,
they're getting to this coming week.
Yeah, for those who aren't familiar, that's that lot at the corner of Airport Road and Marine Drive in Tamuning. Okay, so but what besides that? What do you think do you think that the COVID will have any lasting impact on construction projects outside of the fence? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I definitely think it's going to have an impact. So much of our outside the fence work is geared to tourism, and tourism, of course, is kind of pretty much dead at the moment. Housing, though, seems to keep going, and the real estate business seems to be fairly fluid and still moving. So, but anything to tourism, I think, is going to hit a snag.
How about costs? What impact is it going to have on costs? And will it cost more to build homes because of what's going on?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
It's not just outside the fence, it's also inside the fence.
Yeah. Can you elaborate on that? Why is that the case?
Because again, the cost of doing business and the losses that these companies have faced, they have no other choice than to raise their prices to be able to maintain their businesses.
Yeah. Anyone else have thoughts on that?
It's just the added cost. And it seems that a lot of the materials have gone up. There was, we would purchase things, and we have a record of our purchases. And after COVID, things just jumped up, and and just the cost of, for us, for example, the all the other stuff that we need to purchase now, the time that we need to spend to get things, everything just takes longer. So that's more overhead, more downtime that we're not really basically being able to charge the customer, but it takes us longer, like she said, to get materials. Permitting takes longer. Getting clearances, even from the private contract companies, takes longer. So everything seems at a slower pace, and unfortunately, a slower pace for any business needs lower profit margins, and so it ends up hitting everybody else, and prices ultimately have to go up. As much as we don't want to, it's the cost of doing business in this particular time.
Yeah. What do you think the government can do to assist? I know in times of economic downturns or recessions that one of the ways to stimulate the economy is for the government to spend more on infrastructure. They call it pump priming, build more roads and bridges, which we do need anyways. But that's one way of stimulating the economy. Could you guys share your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think the first thing the government could do and should do actually is to bring back the gross receipts tax back down to 4%. That'll certainly help a lot of businesses. I know there were legislation that helped small businesses of under 500,000 and under, and gave them a tax break of only 3%. But I think rolling back the current business privilege tax back down to 4% would certainly go a long way. And I know there's other things that they could do, but I would put that first on my list and then go from there.
To kind of echo that, the government needs to encourage businesses to start, try and get out of this lockdown mode so that there's people making some kind of income to pay taxes on. This lockdown is going to ultimately mess up the government's bank account. I'm assuming we really need to get everybody back to work in some way, shape, or form as soon as possible, and try to live with the risk of the virus.
Yeah, Rob, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think Bill might have mentioned it earlier. I feel that right now the immediate impact isn't felt on the projects outside the base. I feel the projects on the base are going to continue forward, and that's going to be a stream of income. But the difficulty is going to be projects outside of the base. And any project that's currently going on, they're not going to stop. I don't think there's a situation where they're going to stop the project midway through if it's really towards the tail end of it. So that's something I think that's going to be felt a little bit later. I do agree that reducing the GRT might be a good step to do that, because whatever we can do to reduce the costs on the contractor will eventually make itself out to the end consumer, right? The homeowners, if we're building a home, and so on and so forth. So I think that's a good step. But in terms of the workload, yeah, I think that was an interesting point you were mentioning, trying to put out more projects out there for us to take on that are outside of the base. That could be a step as well to try to diversify some of what we have. But I think the most important thing is to try to stimulate the economy and create the infrastructure for them to be natural, organic building of businesses, if it's the tourism or whatever the case may be. So I think there could be an ancillary effect by helping promote those businesses or that line of the economy to create organic infrastructure needs. Could also be a way.
That's a very good point. Getting back to the military buildup, Are we still on track? This COVID has not derailed any of that. We're still looking at, I guess, 2023 is what the last I heard would be the first transfers over of troops. Is that still the case?
Best of our knowledge.
Okay.
I think it's.
Nestor, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, if anything, it's probably going to speed up a little.
And Nestor, the only thing I do want to step back to what Bill and what Rob were saying in reference to what the government can do. There's also one other thing, and we've got to get there's problems with people coming into the island and the confusion between an essential personnel, which means they can go home and quarantine at home and come back and forth to work, versus going into a government facility. The testing needs to happen at our airport. The restriction of a 72-hour test before you get onto a plane. If we've got somebody that's coming in from the East Coast, they are literally waiting at the doctor's office and hoping they can get a test complete in order to get onto a plane. If they don't have that, they immediately go into government quarantine. We've got to get a way that we can work together with Gov Guam in order to get people cleared through testing to protect themselves on the airplane before and after getting to the island so they can get to work.
Are you talking about contractors that you're bringing in from the mainland? Okay.
Absolutely, personnel.
Yeah.
Yes,
You know, you mentioned
answer,
earlier. Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry, James. Go ahead.
to answer your question, Lucia, we had a meeting actually with the Lieutenant Governor as well as the then Director of Public Health on that issue.
I was on that call.
And it had to do basically with workers coming in from the U.S., Australia, and some of these not so, I guess, high-risk areas. And a lot of the answer pretty much that we got was that these companies who are bringing these types of workers who are considered essential would then kind of talk to Department of Public Health or the administration, and it'll be on a case-by-case basis on whether they can be allowed to come in or not without that. We tried to implement a testing at the airport. In fact, we were offering, certain companies were offering to pay for equipment to be housed at the airport to do that. The answer for that also was that they couldn't do it at the airport because there was a requirement for the space that needed to have these tests done at. So they were suggesting off-site from the airport where they can actually, inbound passengers can go from the airport directly to the testing facilities, and that'll only take about a half hour or more for to get the results, and then from there they can determine that. But not too many companies. I think of one company that did that, and they had no problems getting their folks to come in. Now, if you got H2 workers coming in from, let's say, the Philippines, that might be a different challenge coming from that area. And so those are things that we're still trying to be resolved. But for now, if you got people coming in from the U.S. And have housing here on Guam, either apartment or whatever, they can do the quarantine there and only do a house to work back home type of arrangement for 2 weeks. So it's kind of voluntary. But that's all we came up with at the time that was in discussion. And I haven't heard of any issues arising from that since then.
In Full Zoom is presented to you by Calvo Enterprises, Inc. GU Self-Storage, conveniently located near the Harmon McDonald's. We offer affordable rates, online payments, and auto bill pay for your convenience. Plus gate access daily from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. Call us today at 648-7867 for more information. In Full Zoom is presented to you by Calvo Enterprises, Inc.
Yeah. So I guess essentially the import of H2 foreign skilled workers is pretty much non-existent at this point because of the COVID.
Yes, I don't know of any H2s that are allowed on out of the Philippines even to come in.
Yeah, I imagine that'd be a very difficult situation at this point. Okay, I just wanted to wrap this up by giving you guys each an opportunity to just kind of close out and give us your final thoughts on what you think the COVID is, and maybe some positive thoughts looking ahead at when we're finally out of this, whenever that's going to be, and what maybe that new normal is going to be like. And go ahead, since you're on the screen there, Lucia, I'll start with you.
Well, thanks for putting me on the spot for the last part. I think that Guam and everyone on Guam are resilient, and that's been through Guam's history. And I think that that's where we all need to be. Is we need to continue to educate those that may be fearful, where sometimes that fear may be unnecessary. But getting your people and letting your people know that you care about them. You care about them being safe at the job, coming home, safe from just construction, but then being safe from coming home from being caught up in a positive case scenario. All we can do is encourage, mentor, and train people to come back to work. It's safe. There are things in place, and we want everybody to go back to work. We want everybody to be able to not be in dire straits that they may find themselves in right now.
All right, Rob, should we keep our chin up, and our people got hope still?
Absolutely. I think that's one of the big takeaways, hopefully, from this conversation. I really like the way you put that together, Lucia. Is I think there is a lot of hope, and I think, relatively speaking, the island, in terms of positive cases, is doing fairly well, and that, it speaks a lot to how everyone's handling the situation. People are still going to work. I think that I do think that there's hope at the end of the tunnel. Maybe there will be a new normal, and everyone's still trying to wrap their head on what exactly that will be, especially in the construction industry. But I have no doubt that we're going to work our way through it, and luckily enough, we have the military side of things to help push things forward, but I think that's going to trickle forward, and we're going to find our way on the other side of the industries as well, and we're going to make a path forward. So I am very positive with how things will turn out.
Thank you. And Jessica, your family company's been around for quite a while. You're still going to do some plumbing for the people, right?
Absolutely. We're not going anywhere. It's just like she said, a matter of just making sure that we follow the guidelines and try to keep everybody safe. That's, with our company and our employees, our workers, their families. And I think, like you said, Guam's been really good about keeping the numbers down. So it is going to be the new normal, but this will never go away. It'll always be here, if not another strain that comes out of it. So it's just us changing our mindsets and also our habits, and making sure that we're cognizant of things as we do things. What was normal before, what was our standard practice, will no longer be acceptable anymore. We have to switch up and take precautions and be safe.
Yeah, and I think we might have lost Bill, James, so I'm going to give you the final word.
Okay, well, I share the same sentiment as everybody else, but naturally I'm an optimist, and so I know that there's hope and for the industry and hope for the island going into the future. But I also want to mention that this is also an opportunity. We are severely affected by a lack of workforce in our industry, and we know that there's high unemployment right now, and so we're looking for workers. So if you feel that you fit that mold of being a construction worker, then this could be an opportunity that you can investigate. Now, we don't just hire people off the street and have a warm body going to these things. You got to have, first of all, you have to have the desire to work in construction, and knowing what construction is. It's working under hot conditions, temperature, humidity, high humidity, and all that. But there's an opportunity there if you want to avail yourselves. But you just need to have that training and that skill, and you can develop that skill through training either at the Guam Community College or at the GCA Trades Academy, because we're looking for workers. And this is an opportune time for those, especially who are out of a job right now, to consider construction as a longer-term career for them. And hopefully that'll take care of our skills gap in construction.
Well said. I think that's a very good point. There is going to be a lot of unemployment, especially from those who were part of the tourism industry, until that industry starts to get back up on its feet Who knows when that will be? So why don't you consider a career in the construction industry, as James said. Thank you very much for joining us. James Martinez, Bill Beery, who we lost early, Jessica Barrett, Lucia Wood, and Rob Salas Jr. Thank you for joining us. I'm Nestor Licanto. This is In Full Zoom.
Thank you.
See you next time.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
In Full Zoom is presented to you by Calvo Enterprises, Inc.